As the event will begin shortly, please switch off your mobile phones or make it in silence. Events to celebrate Madras Day. 22nd August is often referred to as Madras Day and marks the day the city was founded in 1639, when a small strip of land then stretching 3 miles on the Coromandel coast was bought by English East India Company from the ruler Namala Channappa Nayakuru. The region was then primarily a fishing village called Madras Patnam. A year later, the English built Fort St. George, the first English major settlement in India, which became the nucleus of the growing colonial city and urban Chennai. The biggest cultural, economic and educational center and the gateway to South India, Chennai. Odissi wishes all its guests a very happy Madras Day. Authors Speak is an Odissi initiative to celebrate 3 authors from Chennai who will speak about themselves, their books and of course Chennai. She is a 16-year-old student from St. Michael's Academy. She is an avid reader and has been passionate about writing from a very young age. She loves collecting quotes from every possible source and has always dreamt of having a personal little library at home. She also enjoys weaving her thoughts into her own quotes and poems. Active scraps of writing that model into articles and sometimes even short stories. A new book was born, Feather People. Now she has already started her second novel. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Nadia Hassan. He is an actor, screenplay writer, and an aspiring director in the film industry, primarily focusing on South Indian cinema. Visual Communication graduate from Azad Memorial College of Arts and Science. Senior sub-editor and creative head of videos in the entertainment portal BehindWoods.com. He has written screenplays for animated cartoons including The Tagusters, a feature-length animated movie that won the FICCI award under the Best Film in the National category in the year 2013. Has also acted in the movie Thirumanam Ennum Nikka and 2 upcoming movies Malayal Veil and Mini. His books Clouds Don't Pass, the story of an aspiring actor with a lot of romance, passion and friendship is his first book. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Abhishek Krishnan. He is a well-known and widely acknowledged retail and shopper behavior expert who has been an integral part of the transformation of Indian retail. He has successfully introduced several modern retail formats in India, starting with supermarkets in mid-90s and various other mass merchandise, lifestyle and specialty stores. His expertise stemmed from having handled varying functional roles, especially the marketing and customer service function at a CXO level. He has been involved with strategy formulation and also the rollout and execution for multiple startups. His keen understanding of shopper behavior has played an important role in the successful launch of the various formats and stores. Apart from this, he also has international retail exposure with Makro UK and Walmart's UK subsidiary ASDA. He is a prolific writer, having written several hundred articles and case studies for leading publications. He is now very active in the knowledge space and is engaged in sharing his extensive expertise through strategy consulting assignments. He also conducts a range of training programs about retail and on a variety of topics based on his books. The author of The Indian Tales, Out of Syllabus, and the Odyssey bestseller Break Free. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. V. Rajesh. Time for our Chennai author speak. Request Mr. V. Rajesh to take the session forward with Nakia Hasan, Abhishek Krishna, and share their experience of writing their books and how Madras Chennai played a major role.
Thank you for that lovely introduction of all of us.
Yeah, thanks for calling me Abhishek Krishna.
Thank you all for taking time out and being here and listening to us. And thanks to Odyssey for organizing this fantastic evening. And I am not just flattering, but neither am I making a formal statement. I'm genuinely and sincerely thanking Mr. Ashwin and his namesake, Mr. Ashwin Jr. And Odyssey for organizing this, because like we were discussing just before the event started, Chennai authors as a group are hardly known or recognized. Is it the typical South Indian sense of being humble and quiet? I don't know. We don't normally thump our chests and boast about it.
Yeah, we're just modest.
So I was very, very impressed and surprised when I saw that there are so many Chennai authors, and I think I would like to thank Odyssey again for making all of us aware that there are so many Chennai authors. Thanks a lot. So with that, let's kick off and maybe some interesting memories about Chennai / Madras.
I've grown up here, so every experience is a learning lesson in Chennai, and I'm happy to be here. I mean, where we go, at the end of the day, Chennai is home to me, and I'll always miss it when I'm gone. So it's been really good growing up over here.
Yeah, I've been brought up in Chennai. I've been here for the past 30 years. That's like my age now. Yeah, I like the smell of Chennai summer. It's like awesome. Have you noticed the yellow flame trees, the flowers of the yellow flame trees forming beds in the roads? That's like, Chennai in summer. And the smell of watermelons when you pass Tinagar, Malipuram. So that's Chennai for you in summer. I like the smell of summer. And one thing that I've been very, 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 very proud of being a Chennai recently is how we managed to recover from the Chennai floods. It's like a very proud moment for us, because the way the youth came up and took over the entire place and helped people around is simply amazing. And yeah, that's a very proud moment as a Chennai for me.
And in fact, there was so much support that at the end of the day, we had to ask people to back off a little.
Seriously, yeah.
There was too much support.
Before I share my memories of Chennai, I think we should give a round of applause to all these people who have actually helped our city come back and get back on its feet. And I can only hope that we have learned our lessons, and we don't have to have these noble warriors come out and again do the same thing again. Chennai for me has a very interesting mix of memories, because it's actually, the memories start off with Madras. Obviously my hometown and in a traditional manner was Chennai, and my parents, which my grandparents were all in Chennai. So this was the de facto summer vacation. I didn't have too much of a choice, because I grew up in North. My father used to work in places like MP and UP. And for a long time, I would feel rather jealous of my friends, because during summer vacations, they would go to so many interesting places and I would go to Madras. But over the years, I realized that it was actually not a bad deal, because I have seen Madras change, I have seen Madras become Chennai. In fact, I still remember a couple of my uncles used to stay in Besanagar, and at that point of time there was nothing called as a terminus. It was just one hot, boiling hot, open area, and I think if I'm not mistaken, 3A or one of these buses would come from the Mylapore side. From that to what we see today, which has become a huge metropolis, it's an interesting journey. I have seen Chennai change. My children, of course, are born and brought up in Chennai, and they often refer to me as a confused Indian because their identity with Chennai is very strong, whereas I keep looking at Chennai versus Madras as a visitor/resident, so it's an interesting association I have with the city.
Another thing is, friends from up north or from outside India, and they ask me what's so special about Chennai, or what is generally special about Chennai, I would say it's the people. Us, we. I think Chennai people are one of the best in hospitality. We've been really good in hospitality, and you can just get into a random conversation with the auto driver. It's very easy. It's very easy to talk to people here.
So has Chennai people and your interactions with Chennai people helped you in any way in writing your books?
Definitely. I mean, all the people who have spoken to all the people in my life, they played a big role in my book. All the people in my life, they're all the essence of Chennai, and they all have the essence of Chennai, and the essence is there in my book. In all the characters, there's a little of every person I've spoken to, and they've all been from Chennai.
Can you give us a quick example of any one such whip of Chennai that comes out of the book?
My family, my friends, all of them, there's a little part of all of them in my book, and I think that's what makes the book relatable.
Fantastic.
My book is completely set in Chennai, so it's my personal life experience. So I've been brought up in Chennai, so most of the stories from the learnings and the experiences I've had in Chennai. And I've made a lot of references of Chennai in the book, and I've used very native language to make sure that there's this ethnic feeling or the local feeling in the book. I've literally translated Kuppa Kotra into English, dumped garbage, to make it look more local. And in my second book, of course, I have references of Chennai. The second book also, the passing of tickets in a bus, I think that happens only in Chennai. You pass tickets and you get a ticket. You get into the bus in the front door to the front door, and you can just pass tickets and get it. That happens only in Chennai, I believe. I'm not sure about the other cities, but yeah, I think that is something that we've been operating to perfection, right, in Chennai, just like the Dabbawalas in Mumbai.
The continuity or the relay factor.
Yes, the only key key rule about the passing of the ticket is to remember the person who you passed it to.
The unity also.
Yeah, unity.
Right. You talked about the second book.
Yeah.
What about your second book?
I've started one. Will be done by a year and a half, hopefully. So in my second book, it's based about the main character has OCD. OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder.
I have that.
You do? No, but it's actually a very major disorder. I mean, people who are paranoid about simple things, they think they have OCD, but you can't call that OCD. That's just
I have OCD.
paranoid.
I've been diagnosed for OCD.
Oh, okay.
My clean hands, you can judge by my clean hands. I got OCD after watching Aviator.
Yeah, so I have to do a lot of research on that topic, on OCD. And I'm moving to learn a lot about it. And yeah, so my second book is based on that.
Taking off on what you talked about research, all the three books have been non-fiction, and I'm personally terrified of even thinking of writing fiction because I think that's a very, very difficult thing to do. You need to be creative, you need to have imagination, which I don't think I have too much about. So how do you actually visualize this huge story and the people and what they're all going to do and put it all together?
See, that's the difference between fantasy and contemporary fiction. In contemporary fiction, you can use a few personal events and a few personal experiences, but fantasy is pure imagination. So I wouldn't say that what I've written is complete imagination because it has a lot of my personal experiences. So yeah.
Yeah, my book is more about I like writing personal stuff. So it started off as a blog. I wrote a lot of personal emotions in that, and then I realized that I'm good at writing things that are attached to me personally because I'm able to, convey the emotions better. And I think that is what is needed in fiction. And I believe that I cannot write stuff that and stuff in places where I can't see myself in that place. So the entire book that I've written is all my personal experience and a little exaggerated experiences, exaggerated versions of what I've experienced. And if I see a random girl, and if I wanted to talk to her and I walked off in real life, in my book I'd probably want to talk to her. So yeah, that's the difference.
Just taking off from what she was talking about, making a slight, rather significant differentiation between fantasy and contemporary fiction. And you mentioned that you are considering about a fantasy book. You are also working in that space in terms of animation. From your experience, what is the one big, difference between writing something fictional versus completely fantasy?
It's the imagination as far as I see it, and it requires a lot of watching because you have to watch a lot of other movies and competitors and stuff like that. And the other thing is that what I see is I have this habit of dreaming when I'm awake. So I close my eyes and I just note down random pictures and I write it down. I do that very often. Even at office I do that. I close my eyes and I keep typing. That's a very vague habit that I have. And as I've been doing, I call it the semi-conscious dreaming. That's the word I put it myself. So I have the habit of doing that. I think a lot. I imagine a lot, and I take the references from from the little things I've imagined and put a lot of magic inside it. And then I try to develop imaginative stuff.
Now, a quick question to both of you, experts in the fiction and the contemporary fiction and also fantasy. If I were to kind of sit like this and say Mabilchi and say I'm like Rajnikant, would that qualify for fiction, fantasy?
That would qualify for hyperventilating hair-raising moment.
Okay. So that actually leads me to an interesting question next to both of you, which is there any such hyperventilating, hair-raising moment about Chennai or Madras which kind of sticks to your mind and something that always comes back wherever you are and you continue to come back?
Actually, all these things, I remember them more while writing. So when supposing I'm writing I'm writing an article or something like that, I wouldn't even realize it, but after I write it and I read it, only then I realize that, okay, this is an experience which has happened over here. And unknowingly, my experience has been fitted into the article, into the chapters of any book that I write, or anything that I write. So yeah, a piece of it will always be in what I write.
What is this question about?
See, what you said about something which is very strong. Nice word you said, hyperventilating moment. Now there are some experiences in life which kind of sticks to your mind and also influences you over a period of time. So any such Chennai or Madras incident or experience?
I think I should go back to the Chennai floods again because that is the most hyperventilating, hair-raising moment that I've ever had. Because I was also there in the middle. I was also volunteering a lot, and I've seen extremely rich people, as in they are extremely rich, and they are Audi cars, and they are their expensive cars are all toppled over, and they have absolutely no food. They had no food for a couple of days, and they were actually thinking of whether they should accept the food parcel from us. But eventually they did, because end of the day it's all comes down to food. So yeah, that is a moment that I've really cherished with the way we fought back in Chennai floods. I don't know why I brought up that thing, but it's okay.
No, obviously it's then had a very strong, like you said, it's a very powerful influence, and I guess that is a very common factor which most of us don't realize, or maybe we are not conscious of, which is there are certain very strong things, and like you said, influences which we don't even realize is kind of coming out. And when you read what you have written, you realize that there is this, oh my god, there is this major influence, and I was not even aware of it. Anything, any examples?
So there's this one scene in my book where the daughter and father are going out to have a softie from like a corner shop, and they're actually as a family we go to this softie place. It's next to a petrol bump on the LB road. So that was actually a true incident, and that has played a major part in my book. So I didn't even realize that it would connect like that, or it would end up playing such a big role in my book.
That's interesting.
Yeah, another thing that I mentioned in my book is how people in Chennai address people. As in, a tea shop owner is very generally called Nayar Kadai. Nayar Kadai. Macha Nayar Kadai poitu varala. So it's very generally called Nayar Kadai. And a pawnbroker's shop is called Seth Kadai. A grocery store is called Nadar Kadai. They address him even if he is Malayali or from Bengal or whatever, they call him Nadar. That goes without saying. And a butcher shop is called Bhai Kadai. So very common terms that they use in Chennai that I've actually mentioned in the book. That is something I can think about.
I actually wanted to share a slightly contra thing about these answered influences, which is what I have written about in Break Free. What tends to happen is most of us, while we are taught various things in terms of language, etc., we feel afraid to communicate, which is what we were talking about. We said different people have different comfort levels. Some of us are okay sitting and writing and communicating without, in a manner of speaking, behind a curtain, whereas some of us are okay standing up and talking, but oh my god, if somebody gave a pen or a laptop keyboard, we can't type out a word for nuts. End of the day, what I have observed is the whole space of communication has nothing to do with what is being taught to us with regard to English or Hindi or anything. It boils down to just 4-5 things, and which is what I have tried to write about. And the bottom line of that is the fact that we are prisoners of our own devices. It's actually a line from the song Hotel California, and which is why I have actually titled my book Break Free, which is we need to break free out of our constraint. And I think as authors, that is, I think, one of the first tasks that we are having to manage, which is, breaking free from having our own self-doubts and will people read. And I remember you telling about how there are some manuscripts which you have kept away in cold storage and you're planning to pull it out. Why and when will you be pulling it out?
The books that I stopped writing.
Yeah.
Actually, I stopped writing those books because when I read them, I felt like I couldn't relate to even one single page I'd written, and it just didn't make sense to continue writing that, because when I myself wasn't happy with what I'd written, how could I expect somebody else to read it and like it? Because I couldn't relate to the own story that I had written. So how would anybody else relate to what I had written? That's the reason I put off those books, and I don't plan on continuing them.
You don't want to take it out, dust it, and
No.
maybe tweak it a little bit.
New starts.
New starts, great. All the very best. What about you?
Yeah, that dusting happened and clouds don't pass, which is that's my first book. So, I wanted to write screenplays initially. I was looking to make a movie, and I had written screenplay. I started off in a screenplay format, and then I just, I don't know how this idea came up, but I converted it to a story format and passed it on to a couple of my friends. Really, it looks good, right, to go forward, and that's how I started writing the book actually. And I wrote about 25,000 odd words, and then I quit. I just stopped writing. I don't know why I stopped writing. A lot of things happened personally, and I just couldn't go back to the book. And there was like a gap of 3.5 years. After about 3.5 years, yeah, I was just randomly browsing through the folders on my computer, and I was like, okay, I was writing something, and I just opened that and realized that yeah, this could make a good book. And that's when I started writing again. And after about 10,000 more words, I had to quit my job because I thought I should complete the book. And I'm very notorious about taking decisions, taking random decisions like this. So I just quit my job and I completed the book. But one thing that that you would notice in the book is that the first half of the book is a little immature. The second half is a little more refined. That's because the first half was written 3.5 years ago, and the second half was written after that. But that actually helped, helped the book, because the first half is college. So college, basic immature talk and things like that. And the second half is when he moves into real life. So yeah, that actually worked. Blessing in disguise.
So maybe you should open your folders after 5-6 years.
Let's see. So actually the book that I've written, Feather People, I wrote it in a span of 7 months. And let me tell you, even then I could see the difference in my writing. After editing and all that, I told you right that the book is actually based on 3 characters, 3 different stories. And in the end, the 3 lines come together in one story. So the first character is a teenage girl, the second character is around in her early 20s, and the third character is in the late 20s. So there's so much difference, but in the writing from my first character to the last character, and I don't know if anybody else will be able to see that, but when I reread it, I can clearly see that. I can clearly see the difference, and I'm actually happy that there's so much progress, and there's so much I grew in my writing while writing the book, even though it was just for 7 months.
I have a question, especially in the context of fiction again, because, like I said, I'm fascinated by fiction authors. I can't, even attempt to imagine how to write fiction. I think it's a pretty tough job. Do you constantly motivate yourselves by visualizing how your readers would, react to the various chapters and scenes? Is that something like a motivation, or does it scare you? Or
interestingly, when I try to think about how my readers will react, I cannot write. I can only write when I want to write something, or when I'm writing for myself. If I think about how they're going to react, then I probably wouldn't even be writing.
Yeah, talking about imagination, I never imagined how the readers would take it, because I believe that writing should be very personal, and you should enjoy the process and not think about the outcome.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I completely detached myself from what the readers would think. But talking about imagination, this imagination was tremendous. I actually started missing the characters in the book after I finished writing. I had this, I was like totally down, and I almost went into a depression for a week.
You become possessive about your
Seriously, because there's this character called Susmita, which I really liked in the book. That was a character that I created, and towards the end of the book, I fell in love with her. And I have a picture in mind, and I've actually been looking for her. I was acting crazy. I was like, what is happening to me? And then it took me some time to get over it. I had to interact with real people to get over that, the impact it created.
Yeah, and when my friends ask me who is your favorite character, personally, even though I've written the story and even though all the characters are mine, I have a favorite character, and they find it really amusing. Like, you've written the story, how can you pick from your own characters? How can you pick? So that's pretty
so
amusing.
who is your favorite character?
My favorite character is the third story. Her name is Mora. She's the one who's in her late 20s, and she's my favorite character.
Why?
because I could see the change in my writing style. I could see how my writing has changed in her story. And even actually there was one girl who even told me that my writing has really refined in her story. So that's the reason I like her the best.
Great.
Right, I just want to ask you, I think writing fiction is easier than writing non-fiction.
Yeah, I think it's the same. Yeah, the grass is greener on the other side.
Seriously, writing non-fiction is way beyond my imagination. Probably in the future I might, I'm not sure, because I'm kind of turning into a philosopher now. So yeah, how is it writing non-fiction? How do you get those words in place?
As far as I'm concerned, like when you asked me, is writing your passion? I said now it is. It was not. If any of my old friends had thought that I'm going to write a book, I was like, are you mad? Even sitting and writing my review reports would be a painful task, and I would rather prefer to interact face to face. But like your journey, to some extent, one step led to the other. So I started writing a blog on retail, which became very popular. A lot of people started referring to it and quoting it and all that. And then my friend said, hey, it's now time for a book. So I sat down and wrote the book. I basically built on the blog. The blog was like a skeleton, and I added on the flesh, muscles, etc. That gave me confidence. And I'll come back to the confidence and again ask something of both of you. Let me complete the loop of what you asked me. Then my second book, Out of Syllabus, was actually more with regard to wanting to share something to the younger generation. Because I teach in a couple of institutes, and I found that most of the people in our country, and it's a bit of a sad reality, have no clue why they are studying whatever they are studying. Like the Facebook joke goes, in our country we do engineering first and then figure out what to do in life. So I wrote this book called Out of Syllabus, and the intent and hope was I could give some clarity with regard to what to do, what to plan for, how do you look at a career, do you plan, don't you plan, and then how do you link it back to the other things you do, etc. Breakfree was a kind of similar thought process. When I started seeing that one of the biggest constraints that people have in a day-to-day life is communication. In spite of, like I said, being taught almost everything about communication with regard to language, etc., etc. And like I was mentioning to you, we keep getting punished so often for not having good handwriting and things like that. Like I spent most of my time outside the class because my handwriting was awful. Unfortunately, we don't have communication as one of the strong points. That's how Breakfree happened. Now, if you're going to ask me how I sat down and wrote it, what I try to do is I try to, imagine that I'm actually talking to somebody and I'm sharing with them my life experiences and what I have learned, what my mentors in my corporate life and also personal life have shared with me, have taught me. And I guess that's how I sit down and write. But then, like I always said, fiction, oh my god, it scares me to even think about it.
Yeah, that's the question I had.
Okay. I wanted to actually close the loop with both of you, which is, I was talking about, I used to sit and write. Over a period of time, I realized that writing is actually a bit lonely. Right? You
write what you can't speak, so yeah, you could say that it's a bit lonely because when you're writing something, you're writing it because you cannot say it otherwise. So writing becomes your means of communicating, of saying something that you'll be scared to say otherwise. So yeah, you could say that in a way.
I mean, how do you keep yourselves going? You are sitting there, you are writing, and
no,
sometimes.
but that's not the sad part actually. That's the good part because you're communicating in another means. So your communication is happening that way. So that's a good thing. That's not a sad.
That's a very good, interesting perspective. So you are saying that this actually channelizes your communication in a manner which otherwise would be blocked and
Yes,
kind of dammed up. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, for me, writing is lonely, but the process that took me to that writing phase is good because I don't know, I experienced a lot of happenstances in life. I've spoken to a lot of people, and all that goes into the book. So when I write, I feel lonely, but I don't feel lonely. I travel with the characters in the book. But yeah, writing is lonely when you write because you sit alone and write. But otherwise, the process that takes you into the writing is not lonely.
Okay.
If you like your characters, then it's less lonely because you can
Like my friend who is falling in love with Sushmita, right? Sushmita keeps company to him.
No, the thing is,
Dora for you.
Moira.
Nora for you.
The thing is, I started emoting, when I write and when I write the characters and how they speak and how they react to different situations. I remember this person when I was writing at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was like writing. My bedroom door was open, and I was writing a sad scene. My dad just walked past my room, and I came back and was like, "Why are you crying?" I was like, "Oh, sorry." Yeah, that happened. I started emoting.
So actually you're not alone, you are there inside.
True. Right.
And the thing about writing is that you don't have to make up the story when you're typing it or when you're writing it. In the middle of the day also you can just think about your characters and just imagine what's going to happen next in your story, what's going to happen with them in their life. And
That's interesting, but then how do you remember this? When I can't have the nuts remember half the thing I think throughout the day. So how do you remember to take this thought forward and actually sit and flesh it out when you have the time to write?
I make notes so that I can come back and refer to them. Even if, and this is also helpful in case I stop writing for a few months. If I keep notes, then I don't have to, if I want to start writing again after a year or a few months, I don't have to read the entire story that I've written. I can just read my notes.
You just pick it out from that point.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you
I don't make notes. I believe that the story into me. I've always lived with the story. As far as Clouds on Past is concerned, I don't know how I would. I'm approaching my second book also the same way. I don't make notes. It just so happens that I remember what is happening, what is going to happen next. And sometimes I like to surprise myself. I think of something and then I write something else.
That happens anyway. Even if you make notes, that happens.
Yeah, right.
So you kind of discover new dimensions to the thought.
Definitely. In the beginning, you might imagine your whole story, you might know the suspense, and when you're writing the book, the entire suspense might change. It could make such a big difference.
Any example of how the whole thing
In the
changed
story that I
and
stopped writing, even in that, I had thought of a story at first, but towards the end, I didn't really like where it was leading. So that's one of the reasons I stopped writing it. And even in this story, in fact, when I started writing it, I didn't think of exactly how their lives, all three lives, would get tied up together. But then I surprised myself because it connected so easily, and the last chapter or the last few chapters, in fact, it was just a flow because I was happy with the entire story and how it was going. So it was easy to end it.
Yeah, in my book also initially I had a very happy ending for Sushmita. And then I surprised her also. I made it a sad ending for her. And after I finished writing, I was like, I'm sorry, Sushmita.
A slightly different question, away from writing, more to do with the reading thing. Increasingly we find that we have all these electric readers and e-books and also the fact that the reading habit seems to be kind of slowly falling by the wayside. What is your take on it? Is it really falling by the wayside, and can we do something to actually stimulate the reading habit? Because I personally think it's one of the best things a person can have in their lives, which is this whole thing of reading, and it opens up so many new windows of perspective and new ideas and things like that. So how do you think we can bring back this whole thing of reading and put people back into nice bookstores
Do you
like
mean
this?
reading as in like e-books or You think that it's lost because people are reading it in ebooks, or you think that it's lost in the sense that it's lost, people are not reading
There
it?
are two parts to my question. One part is reading itself seems to be, kind of on the wane. People are more comfortable clicking on a video link and seeing it and then halfway stopping it and looking at something.
And audiobooks. I mean,
And
what is that?
What the hell is
That is not
Right.
called reading.
right? And the second is, if you are saying, yeah, I would like to read. Are you really taking the trouble to go and picking up something and
I
reading
love
and thinking?
buying books.
Yeah,
I
so the
love
question
reading.
is how can we, propagate this? Does it need to be propagated? First part. And if yes,
I think it should start from school. Very honest, I'm not a big reader myself. I was a very avid reader when I was young, when I was about 5th standard or something. We had library classes in school, and my librarian was, she ate up half of our library class. As in, she used to watch us coming in line from far away from the library. She used to watch us, and if anyone breaks the line, half an hour speech. She's a Malayali. She's like, you should come in the correct line and the correct view. She keeps speaking and she wastes about 20-30 minutes of the library class, and we ended up with like 20 minutes, 10 minutes of the period. So that's how I started hating reading. It was like it all comes back to the teacher, right? So she never used to give us. I used to like reading famous five back then. She never used to give me those books. She used to give me Tinkle, Chapak, and books like that. And I used to sneak a few books from the library back home. I used to read famous five, but I don't know where it went. I don't know how I lost that interest. It just went off. And I think I'm glad that I lost interest in reading, because now after I finished that book, I started reading, and I find the authors very intimidating. I find that can people write like this is like awesome, So I think I wouldn't have written a book if I was reading.
okay, that's an interesting perspective. You think that reading actually
Yeah,
is
it
a
was
very
really-
high benchmark?
True, yeah.
Oh,
It's the
okay.
exact opposite for me. I feel like the more I read, the more I can write, because if reading stops amusing me, then I wouldn't want to write. Because and for me, reading goes back all the way. I used to hate reading in 5th grade and all. I couldn't stand the sight of books. My neighbor used to love reading books. She used to beg me to read Harry Potter, and I hated it to such an extent that she made me go to the library with her. She made me buy the book, and I borrowed it, and I tore a few pages in the book just so that I could go and tell her that a few pages are missing, so I can't read it. And she believed me. So that's how much I used to hate reading. That's how much I used to hate Harry Potter. If she wanted to come home and watch Harry Potter, I would ask her to leave. Harry Potter movie.
So how did that change?
She's not my neighbor now. She left, and after that, another neighbor came, and she's also reading.
I'm a reader.
Yeah. So once again she told me to try and read Harry Potter again. So in 6th grade I tried again, and then
So maybe the second time
Yeah.
that he was the key part. So an interesting idea that comes out from what you're telling me is, should we all start consciously and seriously creating some kind of a reading club in each neighborhood, where we gather the young children and actually inculcate, make them excited, make them interested in reading.
But see, at the end of the day, it's all about the interest, right? You can't force somebody to read. You can tell them that here, I've read this book, I can recommend it to them, but I can't force them to read it. So if they're not interested,
Absolutely.
anyway they'll stop reading.
Absolutely. The point I'm trying to debate or discuss is that a way to create that interest at for want of a better word, at a grassroots level?
Yeah, it now burns down the school again, because the academics is like, I think Nakia will know better because she's in school now. The academics itself is packed that reading those books, those syllabus books, makes you sleep. So people generally, whenever I speak to people about reading, they're like, The moment I open a book, I sleep. That's because of the academics. That's because of they think that they have to memorize those lines that they write. That happened back in school also. In my library, I had to whenever I was given a tinkle or a chapel, after I finished each book, the librarian used to check if I had actually read the book. So she used to ask questions from the book.
Oh yeah, you have to write a summary.
Yeah.
It's compulsory to write a summary and all that. Yeah.
So
But at the same time, I
that's
think
like scaring the people. Reading is an art.
yeah, but at the same time, I think it's an escape, right, from your life, from the education, or from reading your school books. When you read another book, it's an escape. So I like to see
Is
that.
that actually, it's a very interesting term you have used, escape. Is that actually the thing that we should maybe start spreading to all the parents, that on one hand, don't think of reading as an escape from studies, while on the other hand, you should give them that escape, which is a far more healthier and productive and constructive escape than maybe television, for example.
Yeah, as you said, we should think about bringing in a lot more reading clubs. I think a few people are taking initiatives. I know a couple of friends who started their own libraries, and we are doing little activities here and there. I think people in the ODC and stores like ODC can come up with ideas like that.
No, Odyssey, I think that's a lot of activities with regard to reading clubs and things like that.
That's
That's
actually
really
very
nice to see.
Yeah.
But my request, suggestion, point is, at least all of us who are here, we should go back and maybe spread the word, tell our friends, neighbors, quote her example about how her neighbor's influence led to her becoming an author, and you never know how reading is going to have a positive influence until, again, taking off from what she said and what you said.
Then again, how do we know that everybody over here is a reader? Why, if they're not reading,
So
why would they
maybe,
go to other
maybe the
people?
message is to them first and slowly
Yeah.
to spread. I presume that everybody's a book lover and they are here with us in this evening.
Now, what reading actually does is it gives a lot of information. As in, you read different culture. As you said, you've been reading a lot of foreign books. You get to know their culture, and you learn good stuff. You learn about a random celebration, a random festival that they celebrate that you probably never heard of. That all comes through reading. So, I think that is one main.
And again, going back in time to the Madras days, I remember Madras used to be, the culture of reading was very strong. And you would always see people with some book or the other, and people would be talking about a book or debating about an author and things like that. And I for one would definitely love to see that part of Madras come back and see a lot more of people reading.
But maybe it's also gone because television is coming up more, or because social media is coming up more. So reading has become lesser and lesser. So it also has to do with the people and with how people are growing up.
True. So I hope they're growing up is with books rather than without books, because having grown up with books and also your experiences of having grown up with books obviously has a huge positive spin-off. And I don't think we can stress that enough with regard to the role of books and how much it adds to a person's life.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot of late, and I can see the difference. Even when I write something, I'm like, no, that is way better than this. So I have to rewrite. I have to work.
And sometimes when you read a book and when you complete it, you're so awestruck by it. You're just sitting there for 10 minutes wondering how nobody else can see this, and how nobody else can appreciate this or see it like how I'm seeing it. That has happened to me a lot of times. I read a book and then I go tell somebody how much I liked it and what I liked about it, and they're just like, I just read a book. What is so big in that?
The best thing about reading is the human brain's capability of imagining things as you read. that happens. Everybody, I thought only I could do it, but as eventually I learned that everyone does that. So that is actually very peculiar and really surprising, because as the words go into your head, they run out into pictures and they form imaginary pictures in your head. That's like amazing, right?
And then how disappointing it is when it turns into a movie and.
Yeah, thing is, that is a right example, because this John Green's book, what's his name?
Fault in Our Stars.
Yeah, Fault in Our Stars. I watched the movie first, unfortunately, and I'm not able to enjoy the book now. Vice versa, I read, what's the author's name? Walk is that?
Walk in the clouds.
No. A Walk to Remember. Yeah, I read the book, I liked the book. Nicholas Sparks. I read the book, I liked the book, and I was like, crap. So
I could not finish the movie, it was that bad.
it was horrible.
Which kind of leads me to another question that I want to ask you. It's okay, we are good for time or? Okay, thanks. I think I should also ask the audience. I hope we are not boring you.
Yeah.
Can I go ahead and ask? Thanks. You were talking about how when you read books, images get created and things like that. So I'm sure that your readers, the readers of your book, have given you feedback, comment, reviews. Is there any feedback or review or perspective that they have had after reading your book, which kind of, oh my god, I never thought of this?
My known people actually told me that my book sounded a lot like I was just sitting with them and talking to them and telling them a story. And I was really surprised by that, because when I was rereading the manuscript, I did not realize that it sounded like I was just sitting and casually talking to somebody. So that was one thing, that was one feedback that really surprised me more than any other feedbacks.
Right.
I wasn't surprised, but the major, what I really wanted to do through the movie, through the book, is that I'm an aspiring actor. So I've gone to a lot of, terrible fraudulence, and I've gone through the wrong side of cinema. I've experienced a lot of people cheating me, and how do I put this?
Underwhelming you.
How do I put this in a very? I was even approached for unnatural conjugation. Yeah. There's a lot of things that happened, and I wanted to pen that down. That was the initial motto of the book, and then I built a love story behind that. And most of them are my experiences, and I thought that people would be more interested in reading those the negative aspects of cinema, but ultimately they like the book as a romance story, as a story of friendship or passion.
So it was the focus on the romance that kind of caught the reader's attention.
Yes.
Great. I should share similar interesting feedback from a reader. I was quite amazed when one of the readers suddenly posted on Amazon saying that this is the best book on personality building. And then I said, oh my god, this is not what I wrote. I wrote about communication. So then I read the review, and I was quite amazed, because this person has actually taken the positive outcome of having read that book and following that into the next level. And what he says is, most of the personality issues with regard to not being confident and not being able to have good relationships and not being effective, it all boils down to the fact that you can't communicate. You can't put your idea into the other person's mind and make them be in sync with what you're thinking.
Communication, in the sense, are you talking about difficulty in language or difficulty in expressing what you're saying because you're scared of how the other person will react to what you're saying?
Let me answer that with an interesting reality, which is, we have a pug at home, and his name is Shifu. We often call him Master Shifu. His name Shifu is after Kung Fu Panda, and the reason why we call him Master Shifu is he is actually almost like Master Shifu, and we can learn a lot from him. Obviously, he doesn't know English or Hindi or Tamil or anything, and he communicates only using his eyes and to some extent, certain gestures. The extent to which he can communicate, oh my God, amazing. And it has nothing to do with the spoken word or the written word or anything. So, if somebody were to talk about communication, it basically boils down to, can I make you relate to my thinking and can I relate to your thinking?
Understand.
Exactly. So, I didn't use the word understanding, but you did. Right? So that is the whole thing about communicating. And I never realized that it plays such a big role in a person's personality building. And it was a very pleasant surprise. So since then I go around, also tom-tomming my book as being a personality building. Although that was not the original intent. So yeah, readers do give us some very interesting perspectives. Anything else?
All I want to say is, do read the book. It's called Clouds Don't Pass. It's a story of an aspiring actor mixed with a lot of romance, friendship, and passion. It's about following your passion, not letting go of your passion whatsoever. It was initially, as I told, was a screenplay which I converted it to a book, and this would be coming out as a movie soon, hopefully. We just started talking to people. I hope it does not disappoint you. Yeah.
Anything else you would like to say?
So I've tried to make my book as honest as I could and as relatable as I could. So I hope anybody who reads it relates to it no matter what their age is. And I hope the honesty gets to you more than anything, because that's what I search for when I read in books. I want it to be honest and I want it to teach me something at the end of the day. So I hope this book does that for you too.
Thank you for being a wonderful audience. I hope we didn't bore you too much in the evening. Any questions? Yeah. Any questions? Anything else that you would want us to talk about? Want them to talk about? We are good to wrap up. Okay. And I think thanks to the Odyssey team, Mr. Ashwin Jr. and having been from the retail background, I know how much of effort and how much of hard work goes into organizing events like this. So before we wrap up, I would definitely like to give the team a big hand.
I would like to thank Ashwin for this opportunity, because this is tremendous. This way of supporting authors in Chennai and around is simply tremendous. And the whole event is really amazing. So thank you.
I'd like to thank Odyssey and Mr. Ashwin, because it was really nice to see that Odyssey is promoting our books like this, because it's not usual in Chennai. So thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of Odyssey, we would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. V. Rajesh, Mr. Abhishek Krishnan and Ms. Nakia Hasan for being here with us this evening. We would also like to thank all of you for making this evening memorable. We hope you have enjoyed the event as we have done hosting it. Once again, wish you a happy Madras Day. Authors will now sign copies of their books. Copies of the books are available for sale. Please bring your copies before having them autographed. Thank you.